Hi, everybody. My name is John DePietro.
And I'm Bob Zagami with the Camper Report Show.
Bob, on today's show, I get to talk with the editor-in-chief of Woodall's Campground magazine, Ben Quiggle. We've got a mid-season assessment of what's been going on in the RV and camping season so far this year. How about you?
That's great. He always does a great interview.
He does.
I've got an interview with Win Semler, who was a successful and retired business person, became a full-time RVer, went to learn how to fix his RV and wound up becoming an RV inspector and just wrote a book about his journey.
Wow. Hey, I like people whose first name is Win.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those stories plus all the news of the RV industry coming up on this edition of what, Bob?
The Camper Report Show.
Stay with us, everybody. We'll be back right after this.
Sleeping on the short RV queen topper is as comfortable as sleeping at home. Now that we have the topper on there, it's made all the difference. It's really comfortable.
And the comfort comes from the fact that it's not too firm, nor is it too soft. It's kind of the right level of comfort for being out, especially when you're away from home.
Hi, everybody. My name is John DePietro. I'm here with Bob Zagami. We want to welcome you back to the news segment of the Camper Report Show. And Bob, there's so much news. We had to really cull it down to fit it into our time frame. But let's start with Winnebago writing a check to Barletta because they're not just a motorhome or travel trailer company anymore. Talk about this latest acquisition.
Right under the umbrella of Winnebago Outdoors, they have just purchased Barletta pontoon boats.
Bob, don't say umbrella and outdoors in the same sentence because campers don't like rain.
Well, but it's been raining here for a week, torrentially.
Okay.
We're gonna float down the main rivers here and
Yeah,
campgrounds.
exactly.
Campgrounds
Sorry
are
to
being
interrupt
flooded in
you,
New
but
England.
you know.
Yeah. But anyways, Winnebago did purchase Barletta pontoon boats. President Bill Fennick and the Fennick brothers started it 4 years ago in 2017. And by chance, they had the same Fennick brothers with Don Clark that had built up Grand Design and also sold it to Winnebago way back a couple of years ago. So now they bought Barletta boats for $250 million, $225 million in cash and another 25 or 50 in stock options. But it's one of the fastest growing pontoon boat companies or boat companies in general in the country. It'll go under the Winnebago Outdoors branding along with Chris Craft and Grand Design and Newmar. So they continue to build an incredible portfolio of very successful companies, and Barletta is certainly another one to add to that.
Yep. All recreation based. And I think it's important to note that probably 7 or 8 years ago, right when Mike Happy joined Winnebago as CEO, that Winnebago really was only a motorized company. And then they made the acquisition of, what was the company there? The travel trailer company.
Sunnybrook Travel Trailers.
Sunnybrook. So now they're motorized and towables, but really diversified. So if there was anything that was to impact the RV industry, the revenue can still continue in the boating industry.
Well, and it continues with a lot of other companies that have expanded their offerings to outdoor enthusiasts. And this just bodes well for RVs, but everything outdoors, whether it be boats or hiking or camping or swimming, because all of those activities are great prospects for RVs. People buy RVs to do things outside. They buy boats to do things outside. So it's a general expansion of the marketing opportunities and sales for all of these companies.
Yep. I know this past weekend we were at Lake Winnipesaukee, a very famous lake in New Hampshire, and the number of pontoon boats that we saw seemed to be greater than the number of runabouts or whatever, boats that were used for towing skiers. So I think that area is growing faster and faster.
Well, it is. Pontoon boats are the fastest growing part within the marine industry itself. And you're right, when I go up and down the highway up here and go past some of the, we have a lot of marinas up in Maine, and every one of them has pontoon boats front and center right up next to the highway, and very popular everywhere. Yep.
Exactly. So let's move just north of the border here. And there is news coming out that possibly by the middle of August, the Canadian-US border can be open to tourists like me who love going to Canada every year because of our proximity from the Northeast. But that is going to really help both countries because the snowbirds can come into Florida and Arizona and the Gulf Coast states in the winter, but just as importantly, the Americans can visit the, Quebec, Nova Scotia, Ontario, and all the other provinces that border the U.S. Talk about
Right,
that.
as long as you're vaccinated. So as long as you're vaccinated,
right. Yep.
on August 9th, you can now go further north into Canada, and that'll start to free up a lot of other options as far as hopefully the Canadians can come down here. Also, it didn't say that, but they're also going to open it to other visitors from other countries beginning September 7th. So there's a lot of people in Canada that want to come the other way also.
Yeah, exactly. The question is, what will they use to determine the validity of a vaccination certificate? I know that when I got mine, I got a little card. That hold on to that, but how many people have done so?
That's basically it. I think that's the only way that you can, unless you get a letter from a doctor or something. But most people, when they ask for that, they want to see the little card.
Yep, exactly. And along those same lines, our friends at Airstream have announced their top dealers for the past year. And interestingly, I saw that they have differentiated the travel trailer group, which is the silver bullet, if you want to call it that, with the touring coaches, and talk a little bit about people not realizing how cool the touring coaches are that Winnebago makes, because they don't, not Winnebago, that Airstream makes, because they don't have their name splattered all over the side of the touring coaches.
No, it's just on the back, but it's their motorhome division, if you will, and they've got several units now. They've got the Interstate, they got the touring coach, they got the 19-foot Airstream, built, all of them built on the Mercedes chassis. And they're coming out, they've got the Atlas, which is a larger one. So it's a fast growing segment. In fact, in some cases, you could wait 6 or 9 months to get delivery of one. But what I like about one of the directions that Winnebago is going.
You mean Airstream?
Kind of like,
you mean
did I say Winnebago too? Well, we got Winnebago on the mind today, but Airstream has encouraged the dealers to have a singular location, much like what they do in the automobile industry. And I think Hummer may have been the one that really got that off the ground, that if you were going to have a Hummer franchise, you were going to have a Hummer building, and they were all going to look the same. So Airstream hasn't gone that far, but they have encouraged them to do that. And their top dealers have done that. Overall dealer group was Airstream Adventures in the Northwest, who's been a perennial winner up there. But the top overall dealer in the United States, Airstream of Tampa, which is part of RV1, which is part of RV Retailer, and they were the top overall dealer, and they were the top travel trailer dealer, and I think they were the top motorhome.
And there's so many different categories.
But Airstream is a beautiful building.
Yep.
Totally dedicated to Airstream, extremely professional. And that's what customers are looking at. They want it professional, they want it clean, they want it educational, and presenting the product. So Airstream is encouraging their dealers to do that, and it's paid off very successfully for them because they have an incredible backlog of product.
Yep, and they have a high-end product, so they want that consistency in their dealership. And it's just like all car dealers. You know what? If you've got Ford, you've got to have a Ford design. If you've got Chevy, a Chevy design, and Toyota, and Lexus, and everybody like that has their own look. So with that being said, let's go from camping to hot water to cool air. And how's that for a transition when we talk about our friends at Truma? And you know what? They're the hot water people, and now they're introducing air conditioning. So I
love everything that Truma does from the first day that they came into the country. They came in with quality products. They didn't get on the buy a lot product and make it cheaper. They came out with a quality product. They set high standards for people that were going to sell them. They set high standards for people who were going to service them. They had a very slow growth program when they came into the country, and they grew according to their capabilities and do that. And now they've just added the Aventa rooftop air conditioners in the same vein as all of their heating and hot water systems. It'll be a top seller. They're available in black and white. It's a low profile unit. Comes in 13,000, 15,000, 13,500 and 15,000. You're gonna see them because the Truman name is now firmly established in the RV industry, where it was not when they first came into the country.
Right.
But they've earned it. They've earned it through great products, great support,
Well,
great
they certainly
education.
they built
And
they built a
Right.
palace for a headquarters in Elkhart. So if you talk about Thor and Forest River being there to put them in, what do they call it, OEM versus
Right.
aftermarket. It doesn't say in this article whether or not there will be OEM product yet, but you know what? You read all the time about people replacing their air conditioning unit, and I think there's really only 2 or 3 other manufacturers that are in the portable RV air conditioning market. So it'll be interesting to see them grab their market share.
That's true, but when you look at the challenges in the supply chain this past year, the post-pandemic year, even the regular manufacturers that have been on units for years were having trouble supplying enough product
Yep.
to the OEMs. So there'll be a ready market. You put a Truman name on a product now, and people are going to buy it
Yep.
because
Exactly.
they know the consistency of the quality and the acceptance level. I mean, the Truma heating systems are in many, many not when they first came in, they were just for Class Bs. They were for small motorhomes. And now you have large diesel pushers with their products on them. So they've earned their stripes. They've done an incredible job of market penetration, and the timing was right. I saw this product over in Caravan Salon in 2019. And had asked Mark Harlett, their VP of Business Development, when we would see it in the United States. And he said, not just yet. That was 2019. Well, guess what? It's 2021,
Yep.
and it's here.
It's here. And
It's
ready to
here.
go. So there's all the news from A to W. What do you mean A to W? From Airstream to Winnebago, with Canada and Truma thrown in just for the mix. That is the news segment of the Camp Report Show. Stay with us because we've got 2 great features coming up right here. Where, Bob?
The Camper Report Show.
Mike here from RV Blogger. Don't waste hundreds of dollars on an external GPS for your RV. All you need to do is download the RV Life app right onto your phone. This app is so cool. It has RV GPS built right into it. So you can load all the specific measurements and weights for your RV. It'll give you directions safe for your RV to follow. And by the way, if you have RV Trip Wizard, directions for your trips upload into this GPS automatically.
All right, welcome back everybody to the Camper Report Show, and I'm very pleased to have as my guest this week Win Semler. And Win has just written a book called From Retired to Small Business Owner, and it has to do with RVs and RV inspections. But Win, give us a little bit of your background, your business background, and how you got into RVing to begin with.
Okay, well, first of all, Bob, thank you for bringing me on your show. I appreciate the fact that you've got me on. In terms of my background, I started, or actually my business background was primarily in information technology. That was almost my entire career. I spent just under 30 years with Reynolds Aluminum as the information technology manager at a facility in the Chicago area. And after that, I worked for a consulting company for a while. I worked for one of the big banks. I worked for a .com startup, which was a great experience. And then finally, I ended my career as the chief information officer for a electronics company in the western suburbs of Chicago.
So that's a pretty impressive background in terms of the ITs and the computers, but you retired early and bought yourself an RV. Talk about how you and your wife came to that decision.
Well, it was something that we enjoyed from almost the first days of our marriage. When we first got married and we have two kids, a boy and a girl. Our daughter was born first, and then our son. And when they were little, we bought, or actually, we started tent camping. And my wife and I tent camped before we actually had the kids. So we spent quite a few weekends and weeks out in the tent in the Chicago area. But then after that, when the kids came around, we thought, well, you know what? The tent isn't probably the greatest thing to do. So we decided that we would get a pop-up trailer. And we bought something that was probably a little ahead of its time in its day. We bought oh shoot, I can't think of the name of it now, but it didn't have the canvas sides. It had fiberglass sides. And it was a pretty neat little unit.
Was
And
it a high-low or a trail manor that
no,
folds down? No?
um, maybe the name will come to me.
Okay.
But at any rate, we enjoyed that a lot, and we had a lot of fun for several years using that trailer to go to a lot of different locations. And then, the hectic life of two people working and raising kids kind of got in the way. And we just got busy doing a lot of other things, and the camping kind of took a sideline. But the desire was always there, and the urge to continue doing that was always there. And one of the things that my wife and I said was, when we get to the age where we retire, let's get a motorhome and start traveling the country a little bit. So I was fortunate enough to retire at the age of 60. And when I did do that, we did buy the motorhome. So we got a motorhome, a Class A motorhome, and we did start to travel.
That's interesting. And I understand you traveled for about 5 years before you had got trained as an RV inspector. And
Right.
you've built that into a business and now a book. We talk about RV inspectors quite a bit on our shows. So for those people that may not know what they are, explain what they are and why you wanted to do that.
Well, let me backtrack a little bit, if I may, if
Yeah.
I have the time to do so.
Yeah.
I'd like to tell you why I even started it in the first place.
Yeah.
Like I said, we were RVing for about 5 years, and it seemed to me that I was spending a lot of time and money at dealerships getting things fixed, and that's probably something that people can relate to, especially if you've got a motorhome or a fifth wheel or one of the bigger coaches. At any rate, one day my wife happened to see an ad in a motorhome magazine for a class that was being offered at a local campground that we used to frequent anyway, uh, to teach some of the maintenance techniques. And I thought, you know what, this makes sense. Let's see if we can get enrolled in that class, because if there's something that I can learn, so that I can take care of some of the things myself rather than taking it back to a dealer all the time, I'd love to do that. So we did. We enrolled in the class, and it happened to be taught by what now has become the National RV Training Association, NRVTA, and Terry Cooper and Steve Anderson were doing road trips across the country, trying to get inspectors trained. And we signed up for that. We took the class. During the class, Steve Anderson had a mini class within the class that told people how they could take what they were learning and turn it into a potential business for themselves. And the more we heard about that, my wife and I looked at each other. By the end of the week, we said, you know what, this makes absolute sense. Let's go ahead and enroll in the further classes to become an inspector. And we did that, and we became an inspector. So now to get back to your original question, what do we do? Well, as an RV inspector, it's very similar concept, at least, to home inspections. And people think nothing of having a home inspector. When they go to buy a house, they say, you know what, we're putting a lot of money into this. We ought to have this home inspected and make sure that everything is okay. Well, the RV industry is pretty much the same. What we do is very similar to what a home inspector does, albeit I think at a greater level of detail than what a home inspector will do. Most home inspectors don't spend almost a full day inspecting your house. We do spend almost a full day inspecting the RVs that we're inspecting, especially if it's a
That's an important item and I'm glad you brought that up, because as all of us have, we've had these home inspections. And they show up for 2 or 3 hours, they walk around the house, they look at a few things, turn on a couple of water faucets, and they're gone.
Yeah,
But I don't know of any home inspector who has ever spent an entire day and provided the detail in the report that you RV inspectors give at the end. So talk about the complexities, but also the detail of what the consumer gets
yeah.
when they had their unit inspected.
Yeah, well, like I said, we're spending um, anywhere from, depending on the type of unit that we're inspecting, it can be anywhere from, 4 to 8 hours or more, even if it's a real complicated Class A diesel motorhome, for example, with a lot of options and a lot of slides and that sort of thing. You could be there 9, 10 hours to do the inspection. And the way I perform my inspections is the first thing that I do is get up on the roof, because the roof is at least in my opinion, the roof is the number one area where there's the potential for water intrusion. And water is the number one enemy of virtually every RV. If you start to get water seeping into the RV, whether it be through the roof or through the sidewalls, wherever it might be, that's not a good thing for your RV. So the first thing that I do is check on the roof, and it's pretty thorough. I'm checking all the seams and making sure that all of the things that are sticking up out of that roof, because you've got a lot of things like air conditioning vents and regular vents and sewer vents and TV antennas and radio antennas. All of that stuff is going through the roof, and it all needs to be sealed properly to make sure that there's no water that gets through and then ultimately into the sidewalls or anywhere else inside of your coach.
Well, that brings up another good point, Win, because lots of times, and we're selling a lot of RVs, and the PDIs, the pre-delivery inspections, are hurried, and sometimes consumers don't get the proper education the first time they buy that RV. So they don't know what not to do. So as an industry, we certainly have to improve and make sure that they're going to be happy campers down the road. So we have to educate them better, do a better PDI. But I'm sure you run into situations where people say, well, nobody ever told me I should go up on the roof twice a year. Nobody ever told me to do that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you find that a lot when you're out there doing your inspections.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And one of the things, after I got into this business, I did some work for a dealership in the area where I lived back in the Chicago area. And the way that got started was I did an inspection at their lot. And I was also, it was the lot at dealership where I stored my motorhome. So they kind of knew me. But after I did the inspection, the owner happened to see what I was doing, and he came by and he said, "Would you care to do some work for us?" And I said, "Yeah, what have you got in mind?" And he says, "Well, we'd love to have you do some walkthroughs for us, for the new owners." So I did that. I helped them out on weekends primarily when they did deliveries of new RVs and whatever, whether it be a trailer or a Class C or Class B, Class A. I would do the walkthroughs for the people as they were picking them up. And that was, to your point, that was one of the very first things that I mentioned to them, was that you need to get up on that roof as an owner of an RV at least once a year, preferably twice a year, just to make sure that everything that's up there is still the way it's supposed to be. Check those sealants, make sure that they're still in good shape, not drying out. And if they are drying out, take the proper measures to replace the sealant so that you don't have any water issues.
All right. So somebody watching the show, some consumer that has never heard of RV inspectors, how do people find an RV inspector? How do they find you? And then how do they find inspectors around the country?
Well, the internet is your friend. The internet and Google is your friend when you come in virtually everything these days, really, and especially when you own an RV. But in my case, if you Googled my company name, RVIS LLC, you'd be able to find me pretty quickly. But you can do things like just say RV inspector near me. That would be one thing. But then there's a couple of other resources that are going to be much more specific and help you probably quicker than going that route. The NRVIA, which is an accrediting body, which I'm a member of, that's the National RV Inspectors Association. They have a website, and their website, nrvia.org, has on it a RV locator, or an inspector locator, I should say. So if you go to that website, there's a page. The first page I think that comes up is a national map, and it shows all of the inspectors. Or you can put in what city you're in, or where the RV is located, and you can specify, find me an inspector within 50 miles, all the way up to 250 miles. And you put those parameters in, and voila, a list of inspectors hopefully will pop up for you. Unless you're really in some remote area, you should see some inspectors pop up for you. If not, the NRVIA is very good about being in touch with you and blasting out emails on a daily or weekly basis to inspectors that may be traveling. And there may be an inspector that might be coming through the area for somebody that's looking for one and can't find one. They may be traveling through and might be able to take care of them.
Well,
So that's one major resource.
Yeah, and there's many people. I know I've talked to Terry through the years. I talked to Terry when he was just formulating his dreams about the academy, and his philosophy has always been that 80% of the problems that RVers have can be fixed by the RVer with a little bit of training, and if you're mechanically inclined at all.
Yep.
And that's good for the industry. Dealers don't mind that either, because they spend a lot of time on small problems
Right.
that should have been taken care of,
Right.
having personal responsibility for your own RV. So somebody who's out there who may be watching the show this week, they can certainly look into the NRVTA training programs and in the NRIBIA training programs, because there may be a lot of RVers out there just like you,
Yeah.
who want to be an inspector, who have the mechanical capability. They're retired, they're on the road. It's another source of income. It's something fun, and you're helping people along the way.
Yes, exactly.
All right. Well, look, at my guest this morning has been Win Semler with RVIS LLC, an independent RV inspector, an RVer, successful businessman, retired. And how does somebody get your book? Tell us quickly about the book, Win.
Well, it's a book that kind of tells my whole story about how my wife and I went from, it gives a lot more details on some of the things that we just talked about today. How we got started, the progression that we went through to where we are today. So how we went from being happy but dumb retirees to retirees that now have their own business and are even happier.
How does somebody get the book? We'll put the information down below too, but tell us how somebody can access the book.
It's available on Amazon. Just look for From Retired to Small Business Owner on Amazon, or you can go to my website at rvisllc.com, and there's a link on the homepage as well as on the About page where you can order the book there.
Great. Win, thanks very much for joining us today. I'm looking forward to checking that book out, and I'm sure some of our fans will be on the computer ordering it today.
Well, thank you very much, Bob. It was a pleasure to be on.
All right.
I'm Jesse from Outsiders Calling, and I love adventurous family travel with my wife Jenny and our son Tucker.
For over 3 years, we've RV'd across the U.S. and Mexico, and it's tough to find places that meet all our needs.
Now we plan our trips with the RV Trip Wizard, pull it up in the RV Life app, select it, and go.
It helps us discover amazing new places to grow together as a family.
RV Trip Wizard with the RV Life app is an awesome trip planning combination.
You can get both for one low annual price. Check out rvlife.com to learn more.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Camper Report Show. My name is John DePietro, and it is a pleasure to welcome our guest for this segment, our semi-regular guest. Not that you're not regular at all, but our semi-regular guest. And let's say hello, bring him in right now, to Ben Quiggle, who is the editor of Woodall's Camping Magazine. Anything having to do with camping, campgrounds, RV industry news, Ben has it. Ben, welcome back. It seems like we just talked to you a few weeks ago, but you know what? We're in midsummer form already. The coming up to the end of July. Give us a little background on what you've heard as far as availability with the campgrounds that you deal with all year long, and how the vacancy rate this year is so much lower than prior years based upon demand. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the 4th of July, the occupancy rates were just crazy at a lot of campgrounds. So I think KOA said they were up 17% over last year from 2020. They were up over 36% over 2019. So that's incredible. Jellystone had incredible numbers coming into, and we're putting together a story on campground, how the camping season's going, and all the owners are telling us that they're just booked solid, and that the fall is just looking incredible. So
Wow, that's absolutely amazing.
yeah.
It's interesting about the 4th of July numbers, because depending upon where you were in the country, many areas of the country, I know the Northeast was rain from Thursday to
Yeah.
Monday. So, you know what, there's certainly some cancellations, but the way the campgrounds are set up right now, there is a waiting list on a lot of these places. So even if a
Yeah.
cancellation did come up, it was taken care of.
Yeah, and there's plenty of people, I think, that are willing to go camping in the rain, with RVs and cabins, and unless you're in like a tropical storm situation, which unfortunately some of the parks were, you're not going to see rain all day long. It may stop raining, and you can still go out and do activities or sit around the campfire or just get away from your house, I think, is what people want to do. So
the only ones I have total pity for are the poor people I shouldn't say poor people, but the people that choose to tent camp, where many times if the campsite is located on the side of a hill or the lower part of the hill, they could be in a boat. And, I've seen that many cases where a lot of the campsites where they had to just like break them down and move them up and put them in another field somewhere. But
as an experienced tent camper, you do that one time, and then when you pick your site next time, you make sure it's not in a hill or in a valley or anything.
Yeah.
So
So you have to check it. You have to get not just a campground map, but a campground topography map.
Yeah.
Ben, when you just were talking about occupancy rates, you brought up Jellystone and you brought up KOA. And my understanding is that both of these organizations now are seeing a lot of interest from outside financial organizations that are interested in investing in the campground industry. That's kind of a new phenomenon, because it seemed that the campground industry was kind of, internal. So the only people getting into new builds were people that were already in it. But could you discuss that to see about the new money coming into the industry?
Yeah, I mean, it's just incredible. Again, incredible. I always use that word. Seeing so many investors coming in right now. Jellystone just announced 2 more resorts that are going to be built. One in Colorado is going to be built by an investment group that includes a gentleman who is on Thor Corporation's board, which is the largest RV manufacturer. So, I mean, I think just investors in general are taking a hard look at the outdoor hospitality industry. And then KOA, I think, announced that I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I believe they're looking at 15 plus new builds this year, and a majority of them are coming from developers and investment groups. And then, besides KOA and Jellystone, just the other brands that we're seeing pop up is just incredible. There's a ton of new brands coming into the sector. So
let me go back to that part that you had mentioned about Jellystone, with one of the investors being a Thor affiliate, something affiliated with Thor. In my opinion, this is some of the first interaction that we're actually seeing between the manufacturers of RVs and the place that people who have purchased RVs at the retail level go to utilize them and enjoy them. Does that seem a little different to you as well?
Yeah, I mean, I don't. The gentleman is Jake Kosowski. He's a member of their board of directors. I don't have a lot of huge corporate experience, so I don't know if they're, obviously some of these board of directors people are involved in other groups
Yeah.
as well, other companies. But yeah, so I mean, it is interesting. Obviously, the RV industry, and can see the outdoor hospitality industry doing well, and it's probably a good investment at the moment to get involved in something like this. So
I know that we were talking with some people from Sunlight Resorts in Florida, and they're
yeah.
opening some giant facilities. I mean, I'm talking 200 site facilities for big rigs and high-end camping.
Yeah, I mean that's honestly on the smaller side. I think I've seen some with 500 to 1,000 sites.
Yeah, I haven't come across those yet, but the
So
other
it's just
interesting
incredible.
note that after a couple of delays because of COVID, the 9th annual, and I can't believe I went to the first one. Now it's the 9th annual RV Power Breakfast has a rescheduled date in December, and again, the campground industry is going to be the featured theme of that event. And, the headline speaker will be someone from KOA. And I know that Toby O'Rourke has been that before. And prior to that, Jim Rogers has been the keynote. That's very interesting that of all the different topics that the RV industry could talk about, they're focusing on camping.
Yeah, I mean, I think they have an economist coming that's going to be speaking, and then they do have a roundtable with Thor, Forest River, and Winnebago that's going to be taking place. But obviously, we, at Woodall's, we like to highlight the camping part of it, and that is a big part of it too, because the RV industry loves to hear what the outdoor hospitality industry is doing, and KOA is definitely the front for the camping industry, and it's always great to hear the statistics they bring to the table, and they're doing monthly reports now, so that'll be great. And obviously the RV industry has a lot invested in the fact that the camping industry is growing. So
Great. Exactly.
Yeah.
Growing by leaps and bounds as we speak.
I'm
So
trying
we
to
wanna
get
thank you so much, Ben, for that midsummer update. And
Yeah.
we'll talk to you again in another month or so and let you know that the Camp Report Show partners with your parent organization, RV Business. And we always go to the top source of news for the RV industry. And Ben Quiggle, you're the man.
Thanks.
And we want to thank you again for being with us.
Well, thank you for having me.